From the Gray Man Briefing, this is a summary of recent developments regarding the Second Amendment, cybersecurity, protests, supply chain disruptions, national security, law and order, free speech, censorship, government oversight, and more.
For the third quarter of 2025, this is Update 1 to the Gray Man Briefing summary of recent developments. Across the country, 2 fire battalion chiefs were killed and 1 firefighter critically injured in Idaho. This after a suspect ambushed responders to a brush fire. In Michigan, a church attacker was stopped by armed security before a mass shooting could occur. In Texas, lawmakers passed bills banning red flag laws and legalizing short-barreled rifles, and also approved a bill to recognize gold and silver as legal tender. Separately, the U.S. Senate removed provisions from a mega bill that would have sold 1.2 million acres of public land, along with other measures affecting gun rights, abortion funding, and immigration welfare. In South Carolina, the state was cleared to block Medicaid reimbursements to Planned Parenthood after a Supreme Court decision. Meanwhile, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Tennessee reported sightings of a large fireball with sonic booms, prompting investigation by federal agencies. Chinese nationals working on behalf of the Ministry of State Security were arrested in Oregon and Texas after gathering intel on U.S. Navy facilities and personnel. Police in multiple states heightened alerts following ICE arrest of 130 Iranians flagged as potential security threats. On a national level, the Supreme Court issued multiple rulings, upholding Texas's age verification law for adult content, preserving the FCC's authority to collect broadband subsidies, and confirming that parents can opt their children out of LGBT propaganda on religious grounds. Another decision limited the power of lower federal courts in issuing nationwide injunctions, affecting enforcement of the Trump-era birthright citizenship policy. The Senate rejected a resolution to restrict the president's war powers concerning Iran. DHS canceled a Biden-era student outreach program over concerns it promoted partisan messaging and launched a department-wide contract review process. Globally, tensions with Iran escalated after the CIA confirmed major damage to Iranian nuclear sites from U.S. strikes. Iran responded by expelling international inspectors and issuing a fatwa calling for the assassination of President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. However, the ceasefire holds, while Israel agrees to a separate ceasefire in Gaza. China continued large-scale military exercises near Taiwan, simulating invasion scenarios amid global distractions. Let's begin today with the current events briefing. A proposal to sell 1.2 million acres of public land for housing was blocked from the Senate's reconciliation bill by the parliamentarian. The provision had no restrictions on foreign or corporate buyers and lacked environmental protections. Critics raised concerns about deforestation, loss of recreation land, hunting land, game land, and failure to ensure affordability. Additional provisions on guns, abortion-related Medicaid funding, and undocumented immigrant welfare were also removed. The bill is nearing its final passage following a procedural vote. Next, the House Bill 1056 was signed into law, authorizing the use of gold and silver in legal tender in Texas beginning in 2027. Transactions will be facilitated through the Texas Bullion Depository, while account holders can convert bullion into USD-denominated payments. The law also lays groundwork for a digital and tokenized precious metal-backed currency. Businesses are not required to accept physical metals, but voluntary usage is now legally protected. This move could represent a shift in state-level monetary independence. Now let's shift into the Second Amendment briefing. A reconciliation bill provision to deregulate suppressors and short-barreled rifles was struck down by the Senate parliamentarian under the Byrd Rule. The Hearing Protection Act and the Short Act provisions were deemed non-budgetary. The American Suppressor Association and over 50 other pro-2A groups called on Senate leaders to restore the provision. The House had already passed similar language, and negotiations were continuing, at least at the time of this briefing's post. Final text and votes are pending. And the governor in Texas signed 2 bills into law strengthening Second Amendment protections. Senate Bill 1362 prohibits enforcement of red flag laws, making it illegal for state officials to aid federal ERPOs. Then, Senate Bill 1596 removes short-barreled firearms from the list of prohibited weapons under Texas law. These changes align state law more closely with federal rules and assert state sovereignty on firearms policy. The laws become effective September 1st of this year, 2025. Now let's move into the government oversight briefing. The Department of Homeland Security terminated the Invent to Prevent initiative, citing its drift towards promoting partisan and ideological content through DEI and LGBT themes. The program was found to have contracted with far-left organizations, prompting the decision. The DHS Secretary also announced a new review process for all grants and contracts over $100,000. While supporters see this as a move against waste and bias, critics warn it may slow down necessary procurement. The cancellation aims to realign the agency with its national security mission. And moving on, Senator Tim Kaine's War Powers Resolution sought to limit unilateral military action against Iran, but the Senate voted it down. The vote followed recent U.S. strikes on Iranian nuclear sites. Most Republicans opposed the measure, arguing for the president's authority to act swiftly in national security matters. Senators Rand Paul and John Fetterman broke from party lines. The outcome preserves existing interpretations of executive war powers, so things remain the same. Continuing, the court upheld a Texas law requiring age verification for adult websites. This is, they're in Texas. So citing protection of minors was the concept here. A second decision supported the FCC's Universal Service Fund, enabling continued funding for broadband access to underserved areas. In one case, SCOTUS ruled that parents may exempt their children from classroom LGBT propaganda if it conflicts with their religious beliefs. Each decision emphasized government or parental authority in contested policy areas. The ruling also could reshape education policies, digital privacy rules, and federal agency powers. And next, Trump versus Casa. The Supreme Court limited the power of lower federal courts to issue nationwide injunctions, narrowing judicial authority. The case stemmed from an order seeking to end birthright citizenship for children of illegal immigrants. While the court didn't rule directly on the policy's legality, it left enforcement blocked in 22 states and allowed it to proceed in 28 other states unless a new challenge is brought in those states. There is a 30-day compliance window, and the decision may shape future judicial involvement in executive orders. So this stops just local courts from blocking presidential executive actions. The Supreme Court ruled that private individuals, this is separately now, the Supreme Court ruled that private individuals lack the legal standing to sue states over enforcement of the Medicaid, any qualified provider provision. The decision clears the way for South Carolina and others to block Medicaid reimbursements to Planned Parenthood, even for non-abortion services. Texas, Arkansas, and Missouri already do so. Critics argue that the ruling could limit health care access for low-income and rural populations, but it's just limiting abortion. Essentially, the ruling reinforced state discretion over Medicaid provider participation. And looking at civil unrest, so the Gray Man Briefing has already shared their latest civil unrest brief, but we didn't get in time to include in this episode. We'll give a summary next time, but go ahead and join the Gray Man Briefing to get this brief on protest, riots, and extremism. And of course, pro-Iranian, pro-Palestinian protests remain widely ongoing. LGBT and anti-Trump protests also persists. Let's shift into that natural disaster brief. So on June 26th, a bright daytime fireball streaked across parts of the southeast, followed by a loud sonic boom and ground vibrations. Satellite data confirmed atmospheric flashes. Initial assessments suggested it was a meteor, though some reports speculated it may be man-made space debris. In Georgia, one home reported roof damage, possibly from that falling debris, and a fragment was also recovered at a construction site to be analyzed by the NOAA and NASA. The National Weather Service warned that additional objects may follow, and this was a warning given only to law enforcement, and a law enforcement official relayed that to the public. Okay, so let's move into the global conflicts briefing. China has conducted a series of military operations around Taiwan involving aircraft, naval vessels, and joint service drills. So looking back to June 19th, this is when the British Royal Navy's offshore patrol craft HMS Spey moved through the Taiwan Strait with approval by Taiwan. Then hours later, China dispatched 74 warplanes, including drones, fighter jets, and support aircraft, toward Taiwan, with 61 crossing the strait's median line, accompanied by 6 Chinese naval vessels. The surge appeared to be in response to the British naval patrol through their strait, and Taiwan responded by activating its own ships, fighter jets, and missile defenses. Then, a few days later, on June 25th, Taiwan's Ministry of Defense reported that 37 People Liberation Army aircraft from China and 6 PLA Navy vessels operated near the island, continuing a trend of increased activity over the past week. Many of the aircraft crossed the median line of the Taiwan Strait or entered Taiwan's air defense identification zone, and this also included fighter jets, early warning aircraft, and other electronic warfare assets. Concurrent naval movements included surface combatants and support ships operating in surrounding waters. These activities align with broader joint drills simulating amphibious landings, missile strikes, and blockade scenarios. Coordinated exercises viewed as dress rehearsals for a potential Taiwan invasion. And on June 27th, we saw those live fire military exercises. They were previously announced by China's Maritime Safety Administration. So let's kind of look at this pattern. So these rehearsals suggest China is building the capability to conduct a rapid, multi-domain operation against Taiwan with little to no strategic warning. The timing of these exercises alongside global conflicts may be intended to exploit moments when U.S. and allied focus is divided. The ongoing Iran conflict, particularly followed by U.S. bomber strikes on nuclear targets, present a potential distraction for American military resources in the Middle East. While those strikes may serve as a short-term deterrent by demonstrating U.S. readiness and force projection, they also risk opening additional fronts that could stretch U.S. capabilities. If coordinated with Russian pressure in Europe and Iranian tensions in the Gulf, China may view the resulting geopolitical strain as a favorable window for decisive action on Taiwan. An invasion of Taiwan was previously expected between 2026 and 2028, but a Trump presidency has lessened those chances. China will likely maintain its force projection in that region, but may wait until a new administration takes office in 2029 to attempt a forceful reunification with Taiwan, particularly after seeing the U.S. conduct unprecedented MOP strikes on Iran. And now let's move into national security. ICE and DHS arrested more than 130 Iranian nationals, possibly up to 200, across the U.S. since those strikes, many of them labeled as special interest aliens, raising concerns about sleeper cell threats. Since 2021, 1,700 Iranian nationals were arrested illegally trying to enter the U.S. at the southern border. Federal data shows approximately 670 Iranian nationals are currently in ICE custody. An obtained memo from the U.S. Customs Border Protection, authored by the CBP commissioner, warned agents that over 700 Iranian nationals had previously entered the country illegally and are in the country now, classified as these special interest aliens, which is a designation for individuals who may pose national security threats. The memo urged vigilance, citing an increased risk of sleeper cells activating in response to escalating tensions with Iran. In part, it read, quote, "Remain hyper-vigilant and continue to take appropriate precautions while maintaining a heightened level of situational awareness," end quote. Separately, DHS reported that 11 Iranian nationals and 1 U.S. citizen were arrested during a multi-city operation, with some detainees allegedly tied to Hezbollah and the IRGC or military roles such as being a sniper. Under the Biden administration, about 1,500 Iranian illegal immigrants were encountered crossing the border into the U.S., and nearly 50% of them were released into the U.S. Moving on, Grand Ayatollah Shirazi of Iran issued a fatwa declaring that anyone who threatens or attacks the religious leadership an authority of the Islamic nation, including Iran's supreme leader, is considered an enemy of Islam, a status punishable by death under Islamic law. This formal endorsement of violence by a senior cleric was issued in response to perceived threats against Iranian leaders by U.S. President Trump and the Israeli Prime Minister. It represents a severe escalation and a direct call for Muslims worldwide to assassinate Trump and PM Netanyahu, along with other perceived enemies. So moving on, 2 Chinese nationals were arrested for allegedly acting as illegal agents of the Chinese Communist Party by gathering information on U.S. Navy personnel and facilities. According to court documents, they traveled to Navy bases and recruitment centers in multiple states, photographed names and hometowns of recruits, and collected other non-public details. They reportedly received at least $10,000 from a dead drop in Livermore, California, to support their activities. The U.S. government alleges they acted under the direction of China's Ministry of State Security without registering as foreign agents in violation of federal law. And now let's move into major crime. On June 22nd in Wayne, Michigan, a man armed with a rifle and handgun began shooting outside the Cross Point Community Church during a service. A deacon who was arriving used his vehicle to stop the attacker, and armed security personnel then fatally shot him before he was able to enter the church. One church member was injured. I believe he was shot in the leg, and later searches uncovered more weapons at the suspect's residence. Police believe the shooter may have had a mental health crisis, and the chief and church leaders credited the security response with preventing a mass casualty event. And then in Idaho on June 29th, firefighters responded to a blaze on Canfield Mountain. They were ambushed by 20-year-old Wes Rowley, who had intentionally started the fire to lure emergency crews. 2 firefighters were shot, 1 killed, and the suspect later died, which they believe by suicide. He was found with a shotgun near a standoff location. Supposedly he was up in a tree and had engaged the firefighters prior to shooting them. Over 300 law enforcement officers responded, including local police, FBI, ATF, and SWAT units, and a shelter-in-place order was issued and then later lifted. Authorities continue to investigate the motive, with evidence suggesting Rowley had used a fire starter, such as a flint or a ferro rod, to start the blaze, and he reportedly had no connection to the victims. There's a lot circling online. The Gray Man Briefing's monitoring it and will report anything that mainstream media censors. Early information right now shows that Rowley, like I said, he used a ferro rod to start that fire. He posted an image of himself in camouflage clothing, along with the song Hunter, on a now-deleted Instagram photo. Some claim Rowley was transgender based on many social media photos, his videos he made about ponies. One of his hashtags said that he was a brony, which is a male who is like in love with My Little Pony. All that's kind of unconfirmed, but there's videos and pictures of it all, so I guess the Gray Man will dig into it, and if no one else is reporting it, they will. Other reliable posts indicate that his stepfather and mother were Trump supporters and had visited the White House. So stay tuned. They're going to track this, and I'm showing you some pictures here as we go through, but pretty crazy stuff. So yeah, let's end there for the day. Remember that these briefings are delivered in real time to Gray Man Briefing subscribers, sent via the Telegram and Signal apps, and also via those weekly emails. Interact with this broadcast if you don't mind. Drop a like, a comment, and thanks for listening. As always, remain aware, be vigilant, and stay safe.